Students, welcome to this video lecture number 15, program for BBA, subject consumer behavior, semester, 5th semester for Bangalore North University. So here we are going to discuss about determinants of consumer behavior under this consumer perception, its meaning and factors affecting perception. So in previous class, that is in video lecture session number 14, we discussed about various determinants of personality. The learning objective of this session is the students will be able to define consumer perception and explain the factors affecting perception. And the session outcome is the students will be able to define consumer perception and explain the factors affecting perception. So let us move on to the meaning of perception. So basically, perception is an awareness, comprehension, or an understanding of something. So what a consumer or an individual understand about given an activity or product or services, about their product awareness or service awareness, comprehension, understanding something about that products or services is called as perception. So marketing concept that encompasses the customer's impression, awareness or consciousness about a company or its offerings, whatever the company offers to the consumer. So whatever the offers offered by the marketer to the consumer about the product's information, what actually he customer understand about those products is called as perception. Another meaning we have, perception is the process of selecting, organizing and interpreting or attaching meaning or events happening in the environment. So in the environment, whatever the products information collecting, organizing and interpreting is sometimes he's going to interpret the make the about feedback to the products or services is also constitute perception. Or when a consumer sees advertisements, promotions, customer reviews, social media feedback, etc., relating to a product, they develop an impression about the product. So a consumer usually sees advertisements from various sources, that may be print media or press media, or through promotional activities that are undertaken by the manufacturer or marketer, and customer reviews. Sometimes what happens in the advanced technology era and online shopping, where the online shoppers is going to give various reviews that is given by various different customers by, after using the products or services about the reviews. Even present customer is also after purchasing those products will give feedback. That feedback will be in turn converted into customer reviews. After getting these reviews, through social media or feedback relating to a product or services, a final conclusion is going to have by the consumer towards products or services, that is called as perception. And factors affecting consumer perception. What are the factors that affects the perceptions of the consumer? There are usually these factors can be classified into two heads, that is internal factors and external factors. Under internal factors, we have selective attention, selective exposure, selective reception, perpetual vigilance, expectation, and subliminal perception. Let us explain each point one by one. And as I discussed about external factors, these are the various external factors, that is price perception, price expectation, corporate image, and perceived risk. So first of all, I will explain the internal factor, that is selective attention. What is selective attention? Selective attention is nothing but where consumer, it is highly impossible to consumer to go through with deep in the advertisement that is offered by the manufacturer or marketer. Hence, he will give only attention to those points which are necessary to him. So that point only he is going to make it in mind and come to conclusion about the his views on the products or services is called it as perception from the point of view of attention, giving attention to only the thing which is need to him. He will not going to see or understand entire advertisement or promotion strategies that are offered by the marketer. And selective exposure. Selective exposure is also where consumer is going to make an only selective exposure to the products or services. So people use selective exposure and try to avoid coming into the contacts with any communication which will contradictory to their strongly held beliefs and their attitudes. Usually depends upon their beliefs and attitudes. So it is also sometimes referred as a part of the process of cognitive dissonance. It is also called as sometimes cognitive dissonance. That is, consumer will seek out the message which they feel are sympathetic to their causes and action and avoid the messages which they perceive to bring threatening into the nature is called as selective exposure. And next one we have selective reception. So selective reception is nothing but it is a usual natural tendency among people to be selective while receiving a certain information and written in such a way that it will support their preconception. Usually uh, what they receive the information that will help them to retain in the future also. So consumers are likely to retain the information which support their beliefs and attitude. So above mentioned customer is likely to retain in memory only in the positive aspects in his mind that he has. Next one is perceptual vigilance, or it is also called as perceptual defense. Consumers may subconsciously screen out the stimuli which is found to be a psychologically threatening, even if the exposure has taken place. Perceptual vigilance can be said to be an reference to the way in which consumer maintains their prior beliefs is called as perceptual vigilance or perceptual defense. Next one, expectation, where consumer has various expectation before going to purchasing the products or services. He has various expectations about the products and services. So these expectations should meet the consumers' needs and wants. So it may be anticipation, sometimes call it as it may be anticipation of a particular behavior from a person. Consumer is also tend to be receive products or product attributes based on their expectations. Is called it as expectations, consumer expectation. Next one, subliminal perception. So it is used to describe something below level of perception, and people can get the stimulated below their consciousness awareness level. Such persons can perceive stimuli without being consciously aware that they are doing so. So usually there are various forms of subliminal perception. First one is a visual stimuli percentage and speech given fast in low volume on auditory messages and embedded or hidden imaginary words given in the printed ads, advertisement or products labels that constitute subliminal perceptions. And external factors, we have various external factors that is price perception. Usually any consumers will give importance much more on their price of the products. So price should be covered in such a way that it is the only revenue part to the from the point of view of marketer. So it should cover all the cost of the production. So usually in mind of the consumers, they have the price perception about the products or services. So this constitute one of the factors of external factors of perception. Next one, price expectations. In price expectations, where a consumer is going to have a expectations, price expectations of the products or services in his mind. Well, best example to quote, I have one old bike called as Unicorn. So I wanted to change that bike to getting a new bike by exchanging my old Honda Unicorn bike with the new one. So I had the expectation to exchange this bike, my old bike, for rupees 15, ranging between 15 to 20,000. So by having this expectation, I went to showroom and exchanged my bike with a new one. But actually, price was quoted by the dealer or a showroom manager was not reached my expectation. I was thinking of to sell or exchange my bike for between 50, ranging between 15 to 20,000, but it actually sold for rupees only 8,000. Where my perception, what I have perceived that it may range between 15 to 20, but it was actually not reached, and its price expectation was not met, and that perception what I have perceived on these old products has not going well. This is called surprise expectation. Corporate image. So even sometimes corporate image also plays a very important role. So usually corporate image plays like that value added to the company's point of view. Even they don't have any physical assets or valuable assets. Also, some companies, because of due to their performance in the public as well as performance in the financial aspects, their value, where their company's corporate value get increases. So obviously, whatever the consumer perceives on these companies may vary from one consumer to another consumer. So corporate image is also plays a very important role where the consumers can perceive in their minds. Perceived risk. Risk is nothing but possibility of losses. Even perceived risk is also plays a very important role in the minds of the perception of the consumer. So it can be defined as the uncertainty experienced by consumer. Usually risk is nothing but, as I said, possibility of losses and uncertainty over the consumer due to an inability to foresee of the consequences of their purchase decision is called as perceived risk. So there are various types of risk that can be faced by the consumer at the time of purchasing the products or services. One is functional risk. The risk that the product may not be function well as expected. Financial risk. The risk that product may not be worth its cost is called as financial risk. Physical risk. A risk which is physical characteristics related to physical characteristics or features of the product. Physical features of the product is called as physical risk. Social risk. The risk of the product not being accepted by the society as a good choice is called as social risk. Next one is psychological risk. A risk that the product choice may result in the hurting and bringing down the morale and ego of the consumers is called as psychological risk. And last one is time risk. The risk which is combined with the fear that the time spent in the product search may be going waste if the product does not perform as expected. If the expectations of the customers, consumers are not reached, then whatever the time that is spent by the consumer towards this product, purchasing the product is going to make a waste. It is called as time risk. So these are the various perceived risks consumed by the consumer. So out of these various factors that affects the perception of the consumer, I have prepared some MCQs so that if we discuss these things, it will be better understand to you. The first stage in the perception process is selection and attention, attention and meaning, attention and logic, stimulus and response. So the first very step in the perception process is selection and attention. Which of the following will influence the individual perceptions? Sensory limitation, previous experiences, individual needs, all of the above. Obviously, all these three constitutes the which have an influences on individual perceptions. Which of the following is not one of the stages of interpersonal perception process? Interpreting, analyzing, selecting, organizing. So analyzing is not the one of the process or stages in the interpersonal perception processes. Which stage of the perception process allows you to impose the familiar onto the unfamiliar? So obviously, organizing is the stage process where that you impose familiar onto unfamiliar is organizing. The answer is organizing. Placing a heavy emphasis on the first pieces of information we see about other is called as emphasis effect, primary effect, impression effect, recency effect. Obviously, the first piece of information is nothing but primary effect. The answer is primary effect. So these are the references I have taken to collect the data for sharing this video. Thank you for watching this video.